Hello, Leon coming to you here from passionfordancing.com, and today I have a technique lesson on the topic of how to do hip action in the international style rumba. I've done a bunch of videos on hip action and rumba walks and stuff like that, but in today I'll kind of really simplify it for you. So let's get started right away. The first thing you need to understand is there's basically two main hip actions that you can do. They're what we call lateral, which is goes side to side with the hips, and then rotational, which is when you're rotating the hips around your spine. Okay? So, and all of the hip actions you're going to be doing in the international style rumba and all on your basics, on your rumba walks, all that kind of stuff, is basically comprised of these two elements. But now let's talk a little bit more in depth about these two hip actions. The first one is the lateral. It's when you're moving your hip side to side. So just try this in place right now. Okay, bring your arms in front of you. Just bring your hip forward and to the side. And actually, I just said exactly what I wanted to talk about. I want you to bring the hip forward into your hip bone. Okay, so when we say lateral hip action or side to side, it's not side to side like this. You see where my hips are kind of back. It's actually more, you bring the hip forward into your hip bone. So that's why it actually helps to think about your hip going diagonally forward, side to side. So it's really all the action is going on with the hips in front of you. Okay, so that's when we say lateral, that's what we really mean. So make sure your butt's not sticking out back. That's the first point. The second hip action is the rotational one. Okay, the easiest thing you can do is just stand on one leg. The first thing you need to do, again, feel your hip forward in the hip bone like we just did, and then you're going to rotate it back. But now the thing is that when people talk about rotating the hip back, it's not just the hip itself. There's also a rib cage, the thigh goes back as well, and the hip in turn also goes back. But sometimes when people think just about the hip, it just looks like, you know, an empty movement, okay? That was me demonstrating that empty movement. What you want to do instead is you want to get into your hip, and then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate, I'm going to bring my rib cage back, and I'm going to push my thigh, like think about somebody's pushing their thigh back towards your heel, okay? So it's going to look more like this. Yeah? So those are the main two hip actions. And then you can try it on the other side. So bring your hip forward. So again, side and forward. And then rotating on the standing leg against the elbow. And then eventually the other leg comes in. That's the other point here, is that you want to make sure that you're rotating against your elbow. Okay? You do not want to do this, which is very common. Which will look like, so if I do it like this is wrong, okay? So we can rotate around the shoulders. The shoulders do not turn themselves though, okay? And now that we covered the foundation, let's take the basic movement in the international style rumba. Okay, we have and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1. Okay? So, let's talk about the hip action. So, we'll just start from the side one. So, we go 4. We're going to push off and bring our hip to the side forward. That's that lateral action we talked about. That's the first thing. Now, I'm going to use the rotational action to do my check. So, to bring my leg in, okay? So I'm going to rotate on the standing leg, and then I'm going to do my check forward, step forward. Now, from here, in this case, when I do my check, I'm not going to get a lot of rotation afterwards. I'm just going to bring the hip into the hip bone here, and then I'm going to go back, okay? You might get a slight rotation, but not much, and just collect here with your hips, and your thighs closing in. Then I shoot my leg back, get into my hip again, then I rotate on the right leg this time, then I go side, boom, push off from the standing leg, get into your hip bone again. That's your side lateral action. Then we're going to rotate on that standing leg. So rotate, and then we go back, hip forward, around, again rotate, hip forward, around. So that's why at the end of the day, we don't really say go side with the hip, we just say go forward with the hip, okay? So if I go side here, I'm still thinking bringing the hip more forward and then rotating around, yeah? Boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, forward, rotate around. 2, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Let me turn around. 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 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 1. All right, so that gives you some foundation for the international style hip action. Now, if you'd like to get 5 free dance lessons from our membership, there's going to be a link to get them somewhere here on the video or down below in the description. Just go to the page, enter your email, and we'll email you those 5 lessons right away. Otherwise, see you guys next time.